Hi guys, welcome back. So now we are going to talk about some of the common requirement elicitation techniques, and whether you are a business analyst or a product manager or anybody in general who is looking to work on requirements, you are going to find these techniques extremely useful because some of the biggest challenges in any software development or product development project are around requirements. So when you start with a project, whether you have something in mind, let's say a feature, or nothing in mind, you just have a simple problem statement, you are essentially starting with a clean slate, something which you have to fill but very gradually. You have some direction, but you do not have any specifics. And for business analysts and product managers, one of the biggest challenge is to come up with appropriate requirements, correct requirements. So when you start, you have very high level raw information, and then you put them into very high level requirements. These initial set of requirements are called unconfirmed requirements. So think of something which you are writing at a very initial stage. Now there is another set of factor which will impact your requirement development, and that is the approach and methodology which you are using for your product development. Now today most of the companies use agile, and some companies are probably still using waterfall. So whether your company is using agile or waterfall or any other practices or framework, there will be certain guidelines, rules around business analysis, stakeholder engagement, and these rules and guidelines will drive and decide how you are going to capture your requirements, how you are going to communicate it with your stakeholders. So always account for those guidelines and standard operating procedures which are relevant to your organization. In general, you will be using more than one requirement elicitation technique. So we will start with document analysis, not just in this course, but I'll say most probably in most projects, you will always start with document analysis, and then you will move on to other techniques. But this is something which will continue to be there with you, and you will come back to this particular technique. In simple term, document analysis is nothing else than analyzing the documentation. And when I say documentation, it means all kind of electronic documents as well. So your email, any manual, user guide, websites, web pages, everything is part of your document analysis. So when you are starting with a project and you have very limited information, maybe you know about the customer, you know about the problem space, you are looking to come up with the requirements. Now you need to have a kind of starting point. So how do you start? You cannot directly call a customer and start asking them questions, which is interview, without any background, without doing any research. So this document analysis is your starting point. This is helping you in understanding the problem in a much better way, in understanding your customer in a much better way. So initial set of requirements or initial set of guidance always comes from some kind of document analysis, which is more relevant today because it is easier to maintain all these kind of documents online. So you have OneDrive, Google Drive, all the companies use some kind of drives to maintain their documents. So it is very easy for you. You can simply go and search for something similar. So let's say you are working on an app development. Now, if you had an app development, even if it was not very similar to it, your current project, you can still go through their existing documentation and see if there are any similarities or differences or something which could help you to start the conversation. In fact, one of the first source you should refer to is the project's Jira. So in Jira, you will have these projects where you can go through all the epics, user stories. And if you're not maintaining this in Jira, then maybe some kind of PRD, which is product requirement document, or BRD, which is business requirement document. So you should always refer to these documents because they are very relevant to your project. Worst case scenario, the requirements are entirely different everything is different, but at least you will have a template to start with. You know what kind of information is being currently captured as part of these documents for your organization, especially if you are new to this organization. So you can imagine that you don't even know things about the template, whether you need to include XYZ field or how you need to include it. So you will always have few questions on the template itself. So always start with the existing project documents, existing requirement documents, and they will provide you a lot of useful information to start your requirement elicitation journey. And from there, you can start using other techniques, which we will cover in this video and next few videos, in addition to document analysis. So just to sum up, document analysis refers to going through the existing documentation, whether it's project related document like BRD, PRD, or document from outside, whether it could be websites, emails, training manuals, anything in general. But always start your analysis with documents. In fact, when I'm starting with any new project, I will always refer to Jira or any other kind of project documentation I can get. And then I expand my research to other material. Next important and quite common requirement elicitation technique is benchmarking and market analysis. Now, benchmarking in simple terms is comparing yourself to the industry standard and best practices. In many cases, it could mean pitching yourself directly against your primary rivals, competitors, and see how you are doing in comparison to them. For example, if Microsoft were to analyze Bing, which is their search engine, and its performance, they will primarily look at Google, its features, performance, market share, and so on. So essentially, you are trying to find out what you need to be, what you need to do in order to be the best in the market. For example, let's say your primary rival is getting good traction on social media. You analyze their website and find out that they have got these unique social share icons, these buttons on their website, which could be reason why they are doing so well. You need to optimize your web content, whether it's content itself or these buttons, their layout, their placement. You need to find out those gaps and fill them in order to acquire or rather gain that kind of market share or position. Because if you understand what works in a particular market, what works in a particular segment, then you too can position yourself for market dominance. In fact, if you just go through some of the biggest websites on the earth, Google, Apple, you'll find them, a lot of these websites are using white background. Whereas a lot of smaller websites, a lot of startups, they continue to use these fancy colors without understanding their market, without benchmarking. So they don't know that white is something which is playing a very important role in customer psyche, in their user experience. And that is precisely why these big companies are using it on their websites or apps. So when you're working on the requirements, always go for benchmarking and market analysis. This will provide you great information, great insight in terms of creating those peculiar features, peculiar requirements, which could provide you that extra edge when you launch it in the market. And in order to do it, you need to do all these things. So you need to find out or rather identify the areas which you need to study. You need to find out the market leaders. So like I said, if you are looking into search engine, then Google is the market leader. If you're looking to launch something social, then Facebook is the market leader. So you need to find out your domain, your sector, and identify the market leaders. Then you have to identify their practices, what these big guys are doing, especially if you're in B2B space. So in business to business, you need to always find out what market leaders are doing so that you can also adopt some of those practices to get that edge. You need to identify their customers, their preferences, like I mentioned, the white color. So if we can find out a kind of pattern, something which is quite common, we too can build something as part of our product requirement. And then, of course, any pain areas which are your opportunities, which could help you with increasing your business. So when you do these things, you won't get it right the first time. But chances are, if you repeat yourself, if you keep doing it, then with practice, you will get better at it. Benchmarking is something which is not so straightforward. You may have to do a lot of research. You may have to use Google Trend, Google Keyword, Google search engine itself, and you have to refer to all the research paper published by all these big consulting firms like McKinsey or Deloitte. Find out what are the trends, who are the market leaders, and all of this leads to two things. One is benchmarking requires significant amount of time, and the second thing is it may be expensive, because if you are getting research material from all these big consulting companies, or if you are hiring consultants who will probably perform benchmarking on your practices, operations, then they will charge really good amount of money. So all of this could lead to time plus money. And sometimes, especially startups, they may not find it very feasible to do. But as I mentioned earlier, you can also use Google Trends, Google, or any other search engine you like. And these tools are free. So even if you don't have access to reports from all these big consulting companies, you already have free tools like these search engines, news magazines, and in India you have Economic Times and moneycontrol.com. In US you have CNBC, Wall Street Journal. So you have many websites, many tools which can give you free options, free material. So use all these to get information about the market, the competitors, industry best practices, and see what you can adopt, inherit, and build into your products and features. But always refer to the market, because it will really help you. At least you will know what you are building and what you are missing. So in the next lecture, we will cover few more techniques. That's it for now. Thank you.